Welcome everybody to our Public Safety Forum tonight on the March 30th at 7 p.m. I appreciate everyone being here tonight. We're going to go through a presentation first and foremost, and then we'll be taking questions after the fact. So please wait for your questions until after the slide presentation is done. And then when you do comment or ask a question, please go over to the microphone over here and just state your name and your street. So for that, I will put it over to our town manager, Bill Chenard.
Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. I know sometimes people, it's nice to have microphones, right? There's actually a microphone in this room, which we'll be getting there. So I'm going to go through a presentation. Some folks up here are going to actually have a few words in between here as we go through this. I do just want to quickly introduce the building committee. Obviously, you know Selectman Brown, he is the chair. David, vice chair. Sharon is the clerk. I'm the town manager, if you don't know that already. Chief Viveros, fire chief. Chief McDonald, police chief. Deputy chief Shea is down there. And he's, yep. Stefan Roundtree is unavailable tonight. Bob Inglis and Nick Konarski are also unavailable tonight. And then Steve Walsh is an advisory committee member. So that's us. I see a few select board members in the audience. Thank you for attending. Chair Trabucco, member Ciciotti. I know that one member has a conflict and another member is ill, so they won't be joining us this evening. So did I miss anybody? So I see a lot of friendly faces, a lot of people that I know. Welcome back. Those of you that I don't know, I'd love to meet you at some point. And obviously, if you have questions that you don't ask tonight, please, forward them to me or anyone so that we can get you answers. After we complete the presentation this evening, we will take comments and questions from everyone in attendance. If we should have your answer, if we don't, we will get you an answer. I want to note that most of the information, or actually all of the information we're presenting this evening is available on our website under the Public Safety Building Committee section of the town's website. If you don't find an answer there, ask us and we'll put it there. If you have a question that we don't know, we will also put the answer there. We're going to start a frequently asked questions section. We're going to start a frequently asked questions section on that page so that we can get answers. It's important that everybody get answers to their questions. So we're going to kick right in. We have a lengthy presentation, which I actually cut in half, so you can see where I started from. So we're going to talk about what are the existing conditions at our current public safety buildings, police and fire. We're going to talk about the history of the public safety buildings and this process and what this committee has gone through over the last year and a half, almost 2 years now. We're going to talk about the response time study and what that means for residents. I'm going to talk very briefly about the Turner House. I actually don't have a lot of slides there, but I threw it on here because I think it's important that we have a quick conversation about that. We're going to look at the site plans. We're going to look at conceptual plans. We're going to talk about cost estimates, and I'm going to share a great deal of data surrounding the cost estimates. And I have a lot more if people are interested, but I'm not going to go through it tonight because we'll be here for hours. And then we're going to talk about the tax impact and what that means to the residents. So we'll go ahead and kick this off, talk about the existing conditions at the police station. I'm going to go through a few slides, and then I'm going to ask the police chief just to comment on those conditions and what that means to the day-to-day operations at the police station. So the police station is located at 80 Center Street. It was originally built in 1978. It has 3,528 square feet on the first floor. 2,016 square feet on the second floor. It has 648 square feet of garage space, which is also shared as a sally port. We'll talk about that later in the presentation and what that means to the force. And it also has 3,384 square feet of partially finished area overall on 1.811 acres of land. Some of the deficiencies in the current station: that it lacks adequate lobby space. If you've ever been in the lobby there, you can't have more than a couple people there. There is no waiting space there. There's a small bench, but it's inadequate for today's police force. It lacks sufficient private meeting room space. This is actually critical to it. There's a lot of times where you're doing interviews, both criminal and non-criminal interviews, and you need to have meeting room space, private meeting room space that isn't available. The public deserves privacy when they're talking about those matters. So, our lockup and cell areas are not separated by sight and sound. There's a requirement that they have to be, especially for youth cells. Our youth cells are adjacent to our adult cells, both male and female. That is no longer adequate in today's policing. In fact, you basically can't use those cells like that if you have another prisoner there. So the juvenile non-criminal areas don't exist. We don't have any non-criminal areas for juveniles. If someone comes in and, or we're waiting for a parental pickup or something like that. Report writing and interview rooms are inadequate. You'll see a couple of slides that have actual pictures on them when we talk about that. That's critical space in today's policing. The evidence and record storage areas are also inadequate. You'll see, you'll probably actually be shocked at some of the things you see this evening. Our public safety employees deserve better. The parking areas don't support normal police station activities. There's a limited amount of parking spaces adjacent, and the space is shared with Town Hall. So there are times a day where there are no spaces available, and even if we're in the middle of a shift change or something like that, it's incredibly limited. Someone will come to visit and there just isn't a space. They have to wait or come back at another time. And then the Sally Port does not support normal detainee transfer. So a Sally Port is, modern police stations have Sally Ports, and what you can do is, we'll show a little more as we go through the presentation, but you drive the police car into a locked, contained area. They're typically drive-through with a garage door that seals on one end and a door that seals on the other end. You drive in, that is self-contained. There's nothing in a Sally Port that a prisoner could use as a weapon. And when we show the picture of it, you're going to see that there's lots of items in our Sally Port. It's not really a Sally Port, it's a garage, but it's all we have. We don't have any other solution today. So some of the pictures, this is the conference room. It's a multi-use room where typically you would have different rooms for these purposes, but it is a briefing room, it is an interview room, it's a juvenile holding room, it is a bail room where the bailiffs come to deal with bail. It's an evidence processing area, and it's the employee break room. It simply isn't adequate for modern policing. Juvenile cells, we talked about this before. The juvenile cells are adjacent to the adult cells, so they are within sight and sound of those cells. The standards require that the cell be out of sight and sound from the other detainees and adults. So they don't meet that standard. This is the Sally Port. It is a garage. It's also used for vehicles waiting crime scene processing, for storage of our bicycles, our motorcycle, cruiser equipment, and maintenance equipment. You can see that, first of all, it's not drive-through. Second, that there's a lot of items there that could be used as a weapon by a detainee. We should have a modern Sally Port for the protection of our police officers. Toilets and sink units do not meet current code requirements. The stainless steel sinks attached to the toilet are pretty common in cells, if you've ever seen cells. I'm assuming most of you haven't unless you've toured a police station. But they don't meet the current code. The work areas, this is for administrative support staff. They're just not big enough for our staff. We have a very, very small area with lots of files with 2 staff members sharing that space. Record storage area, it's in the basement. I want to note that the records, we just had a recent pipe break in the police station. It flooded this area, and it did put several of the records at risk, where we hired a company to come and assist with that process. It's still up in the air whether we've lost records. Knock on wood, we don't think we have, but this isn't how we should be storing our records. The attic, also, it's unheated. It gets extremely hot in the summer, extremely cold in the winter, and it's used for property storage. Computer department, this is a converted space for the computer server. It's stored here. You can see it has the sink, and again, it doesn't meet the standards for modern computer hardware. There's not enough lockers for the staff, so we actually have lockers in the boiler room. And there's a changing area and lockers adjacent to the boiler. You can see it there. Simply not acceptable. Existing, I'll pass it to the chief. So we've shown some of this. Can you just briefly describe what that means for the day-to-day operation of the police department?
Well, it was based on a population of around 8,000 people, and the town growth 500% since then. I employ up to 60 people. Half of that are full-timers, but all 60 have to have access in equal playing area to work and train, and same with the locker room situation. The break room that he described earlier is pretty much used for everything. So if we're eating lunch and business has to be conducted, they have to leave. This is the type of morale issue where it feels like every day we're just trying to make something out of nothing, and we need your support.
Okay. Moving on to the fire station. The central fire station is currently located at 172 Center Street, actually almost right adjacent behind us here. It was originally built in 1976. It has 2,580 square feet of first floor area. That does not include the vehicle bay area, and 2,580 square feet on the lower level. The vehicle apparatus bay makes up 5,920 square feet on 2.01 acres of land. And I've noted a few things here. I know that if you ask the chief for the firefighters, there's a whole bunch more, and same thing with the police. There's a whole bunch more of items that we could be adding to this list. Again, it doesn't have adequate lobby space. It's very small area, similar to the police station when you walk in there. It lacks sufficient meeting and training room space. In fact, it's really shared space, similar to where the police at. It just doesn't work. There are no female bunk room, showers, or locker rooms at our fire station. All firefighters share one bunk room. You'll see some pictures of that. So everybody that's on the shift is in one big room with massive amounts of bunks that are basically adjacent to each other. I'll note that I find that, and was actually pretty shocked when I came here, that's where we do it. But it is how Pembroke has done it. The building does suffer from several structural issues and some other issues as we do there. It does lack a decontamination, or what we call a decon room. Typically in a modern fire station, you come back from a fire, you go into a separate decon room that is right adjacent to the apparatus bay. It doesn't exist. I mean, we have a laundry room, but you got to walk the entire section through the building to get there. Not acceptable. And as I said, the turnout gear laundry facilities are inadequate. We have some side-by-sides that we'll show as we get further along in the presentation. So here's the picture of the bunk room. You know, if you had a family of 13, you might have had a bunk room like this, but this is what our firefighters share. Locker room, it's inadequate. There's no picture here because we don't have any. I know I said that before, but there's no female locker room, shower, or changing area. There are structural problems in the building. This is one picture that the chief recently showed me of leaks in the electrical room where the water was pouring in next to the electrical conduit. You can see the plate on the floor in the apparatus bay. You know, there's some cracks there and some other things. There are others. I took a bunch of pictures of cracks in the walls out of the presentation so we could shorten it from 102 slides. The Bryanfield station shares space with the food pantry. In fact, the truck backs up against the food when it backs in there because it's just such a small area. And food pantry is important. The Washington Station, it just lacks the amenities for a modern firehouse. I wouldn't have firefighters. Staying there, period. We store apparatus there, but we certainly wouldn't put firefighters there. A few side-by-sides to show you. These are actual pictures from recently completed fire projects that are out there. The picture on the left is us. The picture on the right is from a recently completed neighbor. Bunk rooms, we already talked about that. I mean, that's the bunk room that we should have. The one on the right, where a firefighter gets an appropriate space. Dispatch, you can see that both police and fire have very, very small dispatch areas. And I'll talk about, as we get through this a little bit further, the importance of dispatch area. And one thing now is when a 911 call comes in, it gets transferred from police to fire. In the new building, in the new proposed building, he's going to reach over and say, hey, you got a call. Big difference. Equipment maintenance, you can see the difference in the storage capacity there and how things get stored. Exercise and fitness areas, all modern police and fire stations have these. They're pretty inadequate in both the police station and fire station now. The proposed fitness area, you can see what it would look like in a modern station. Kitchen space, again, they exist. It's pretty limited as almost like an apartment size kitchen in the current fire station. It would be significantly different in the new building. Laundry area, this is what I talked about. Our current, you have to walk through the station to get to this. The proposed area, I just want to talk about this real quick. I'm going to stand and make a point. Yes, I will take this one. So you can see what we have now. Washer, the drying equipment. The new systems that are out there, and we've toured some of them, have the commercial washers for the turnout gear so that when they come back, they can immediately go off the decon into a washroom. And then these items here are actually dryers. You actually hang your equipment up there, and it professionally dries it. So in case you have to, go to a new fire. Locker rooms, we talked about locker rooms. So I just want to show what's going on there. And then training rooms. Both our police and fire have no large training rooms at all. They're incredibly small and inadequate. One thing I'll talk about the proposed training room. In my previous job, we put in a similar training room. Actually, it's a little bit bigger than this, but we don't need it here in Pembroke. And we were able to lease that to different folks. Even the Middlesex County DA uses it once a month for their grand jury. And that is income to the town, and it's incredibly invaluable for training. When you have large training events for firefighters, you can actually host those. If you have the ability to host those things, you can get some free seats into some professional training. Same thing with police. So, it's a super advantage to be one of those communities. I'm going to pause now and let the fire chief do the same story as the police chief. How does that affect your day-to-day operations?
I think Bill hit on a lot of the major points. We've certainly outgrown this station. It was built at a time where we were only doing roughly 500 calls a year, and today we're up to 3,700 calls. Our staff is 4 times the size of what it was back when this station was built. Even how it affects how we buy apparatus, fire apparatus, ambulances, for example. We buy van-style ambulances because we can't buy the Ford F-550 style ambulances because we physically can't fit them in the station. To walk from one side of the apparatus bay to the other, you literally have to squeeze between 2 ambulances just to get by. So it limits us in that capacity. The turnout gear is a major concern for us. We know that the rate of cancer in firefighters is dramatically high compared to everyone else. They attribute that to the structural turnout gear. And every study says to keep it out of your living quarters and to reduce the amount of time you're wearing it. Well, we have to bring it into our living quarters in order to wash it. So we're bringing the dirtiest gear we have into our living quarters. Obviously, we looked at the facility itself as far as the bunk rooms. We don't have proper facilities for both male and female staff. And then there's health concerns. We know we have asbestos issues with the floor tilings. A lot of them are coming up and have been just so worn out over the years. Mold, we showed, when it rains out, we have water pouring into our electrical conduits right onto the ground in our where these people spend 24 hours a day. They live there. So we have a lot of concerns with that as well.
Yeah, so thank you, Chief. We're going to shift now to the history in the town and the process that this committee followed to get to where we are tonight. So I just want to note that back in 2004, and I actually pulled this out today to reread it because I was like, 2004, that's 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago. The master plan stated that we should build both a new police and fire station. It also stated that we should possibly, and I quote that because it did say possibly, and I know that there's some folks that we've been getting questions from, or why are we building a combined station? I'm going to address that also in some future slides, but possibly combine police and fire headquarters. Well, we are combining police and fire headquarters. There are efficiencies there. You can build as good a product, if not better product, for our public safety staff by combining that. In the fall of 2016, the special town meeting in the fall voted a $50,000 for a space and needs study of public safety buildings in the town, and a select board appointed the first public safety building committee. They worked with Castle Bruce, who are here tonight, both Sean Smeagol and Todd Coster. If there are questions that I can't answer, we're going to toss them over there. So, but they did a space and needs study, and at that time, the town wasn't ready to move forward. I wasn't here. I had to ask questions why we didn't move forward, and there's a whole bunch of answers I get, so I just used the term the town wasn't ready to move forward. That space and needs study is still out there. It's still valid. It has been updated. The programs have been updated with the current staff. And then in August of 2021, the select board reformed the building committee. That is the building committee that you see here this evening. So what has the building committee done? The building committee, since that time frame, has met 21 times. We've been working with Castle Bruce Associates to develop a conceptual plan and the pricing of a new public safety buildings. We redid the department programming. The program is basically what do the departments do, and based on what they do, what do you need in the building to properly support those operations. We did a response time study where we looked at the existing fire station and response times from that. We did site plans, a couple of renditions of site plans. We built conceptual building plans. We did a traffic study. We did a phase 1 environmental study, and we did geotechnical studies for both sites. So I just want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the advantages of a combined public safety building. I know there are folks that think it's a bad idea. It is the model that's out there. You see it across the country. There are, and part of, I'll be honest, some of the reasons you see them across the country is land is drying up and there just isn't land available. We are fortunate where we have land available, although there are as we studied, there are very, very limited places to put this that will actually work for both departments. So one of the advantages is economy of scale. The larger projects tend to attract different contractors. They make your bids more competitive. They were able to refine the prices based on the larger quantities for those projects. So you get better pricing, generally better pricing when you do a combined public safety building. And that results in an overall cost savings per square foot. Operationally, you have shared utilities and space. You know, a single building with shared utilities and space saves you funds. Not only in the building process where you're going to have your utilities, your water and your septic. You're not going to have two different water services, two different septic services, your electrical, et cetera. Operational efficiencies, when you actually open the building, the HVAC systems are going to be better than the individual systems that you would see in smaller buildings, smaller separated buildings. Dispatch, like I said before, when I tap the chief on the shoulder when the call comes in, police officer, firefighter will answer the call and say, hey, this one's for you. They don't have to call down the street. Maintenance, if you're doing maintenance and you're changing filters in your HVAC system or you're maintaining your boilers, there is an economy of scale and it's cheaper to maintain. Training space, you have shared training space within the building. In fact, you have a lot of them. When we get to the conceptual design, we can show you how much shared space there is in that building. If you had separate buildings, those spaces might be slightly smaller. However, you'd have them in both buildings. So you would actually have a gross square footage greater. And then one of the, I was recently reading an article I was alluding to earlier in one of the fire magazines, where one of the advantages is informal communications. If you talk to police and fire, they see each other on the scene, but they don't cross in the hallway. Those informal communications are, according to the article, which I will share if anybody wants to read it, are huge in morale building and the intercommunication between the two departments. I want to talk about response time, and after I show the basic numbers, I'm going to ask the chief to weigh in and talk about what that means. So response times will improve with the current plan. The majority of the town will have fire response times under 5 minutes. I mean, that is significant when it comes to the ISO rating. I'm not going to get into that. I'll let the chief get into that. And we're not going to get into ISO. Our ISO ratings are very complicated, but we'll give an overview of what that means. So here are, and I'm going to stand up again, take the microphone with me. This is the response time study that was completed. You can see on the left is the current response time with the fire station on Center Street, Central Fire Station on Center Street. You can see that the gray area is the under 5 minutes. When we move to the new plan, you can see that the gray area expands dramatically, so that the majority of the town is now under 5 minutes. Not only that, but we have a significant number of calls in North Pembroke. A lot of our commercial property is in North Pembroke. A lot of our housing structure and our what's the term I'm searching for here? I want to use the term nursing home, but that's an old term. Properties are in that part of town. So we have a lot more calls there. Putting it there actually improves the response to North Pembroke. So I'm going to pause here and ask the chief to just talk about the importance of response timing and how that will affect our ISO rating.
Right, so just so everyone knows, ISO is the Insurance Services Office, and what they do is compile data that they give to the insurance companies, and they set a rate. They rate the town's ability to put out fires, and it's based on a lot of different things. The water system in town, the amount of firefighters we have, and we can put on a scene, but response times is a major part of that. So once they set your insurance rate, the insurance carriers, it can affect the amount that you're paying for your homeowner's insurance. I know in this project we've talked a lot about how deficient our buildings are, and that's a major piece. But the other piece is the impact that improving our response times is going to have. So what I like to tell people, you look at modern fires burn much faster than they did 50 years ago. I think, when we turn the news on, we can see these things. It's, the fires burn much hotter and much quicker. This fire doubles in size every minute. This will give us the ability to have firefighters located at both ends of town and get on the scene much quicker. It'll have an impact. The other part is medical emergencies. In the event of a cardiac arrest, your chance of survival decreases by 10% for every minute it takes us to get there. So if you look at, it's going to increase that chance of survival by up to 20% in major areas in town. A paramedic arriving on scene who can get the defibrillator hooked up and all that, your chances of survival are much better. So for me, as important as it is to repair the existing facilities, it's really exciting to know that these new buildings will have an impact and help us to literally save lives. These are calls that we go to every single day.
Thank you, Chief. So moving on to the traffic study. Traffic study was completed through Castle Booze by VHB Engineering. It's 20 or 30 pages. If someone wants a copy, we can supply you with a copy of that. Basically, what's on the slide is their recommendations. They did a multi-year up through, I think, 2030 study of build-out in the area and the impact of this building and what that means. And their recommendations are basically that we install a do-not block box. You see them with the white stripes as you drive when you come up to a light, and then there's a do-not block box there. Pavement markers and signage at the site driveway on Route 53. So if you're coming up to the light on 53 that's at Barker and Washington, to the west of there on 53 would be this block. And we're also going to work with Mass DOT. We already have a light there, but we're going to, for the existing station, but we're going to upgrade that and work with Mass DOT to put some better traffic lights. They're also recommending that we reduce the length of the existing splinter island. That is the island that breaks the two lanes apart slightly, so you can have a turning radius for the apparatus there. And then install a similar do not block box on Barker Street, or they call it Route 14, well, they can put Barker in parentheses. So those are basically the three recommendations for traffic. They say that this is adequate for traffic, that it is safe egress and ingress from that site with these recommendations. So now I want to get into the buildings and talk briefly about the buildings and what we're planning to build. The main building is at 53 and Barker Street and Washington Street. It is approximately 43,500 square feet. It does have an auxiliary building. I want to be clear what the auxiliary building is, because people are saying, why do we need an auxiliary building? It's a 6,000 square foot garage. It is to store property. It'll extend the useful life of things. You know, we have the boats, the trailers, we have other items that we currently store. And we need a place to store it. Fire, similar story. There's a bunch of items at fire stores that we can extend the useful life on that equipment. Put it underneath, make it last longer, and it is a benefit to the town. The cost to that is pennies on the dollar compared to the cost of building the main station. It is a garage. So I just want to, because there's been several questions out there about that, so I want to take some time to talk. I took some time to talk about that. Parking is dramatically improved. There are 38 parking spaces for the existing staff, and then 44 public spaces for people visiting that building. That's great for people coming and going, picking up records or anything else, doing interviews, filling out a report. But it also allows us to use that training room that I spoke about. We can have large meetings there and training opportunities there for public safety organizations that are out there. The police side does have the dispatch section, a record section, patrol operations, command operations. When I talked about programming before, these are the programming pieces. Investigation, an adequate sally port. It does have 6 cells, secured evidence storage, and locker rooms for both males and females. Fire will have 5 apparatus bays, a watch room, a training tower, which we have now, but it's really not the same. Mezzanine area, turnout gear lockers, which is absolutely critical. Decon area off the apparatus bay, bunk rooms that are very different. You remember the picture I showed. A kitchen, a day room, a triage area, that's for someone who walks in with a medical issue off the lobby, and an administration section. They have several, and I was going to fix this slide, that I'll blame others, but I won't. The word shared should be spelled correctly. I pick that up every single time. No, I'm not telling you, hey, it's my responsibility. It ends here. But there's shared areas, which are training room, a wellness area, defensive tactics, simulation, and auxiliary building. I want to note that I was a huge fan of having a firing range here. When we got into it, we decided that was something we were going to cut. We just couldn't increase the price to make that happen. If you drive by Town Hall, is the trailer still there, Chief?
It is.
You'll see a trailer parked adjacent that we are using as our firing range right now. And so the officers have to train twice a year under the new Police Reform Act. That is more expensive for us to do it, but the cost benefit it was close, but we, maybe in the future, but right now we're not doing it. So rendition of what that section will look like. The garage doors that, are on the left side of that is the sally port. Police officers can drive in with a detainee, drive into there, that door will seal. They can take that individual from there to the lockup area and import them. I'll note they don't have to back out of this one. There's a garage door on the other side, so they can put the door up and drive straight out. Training room is the section in the front behind the flagpoles. And so let me just get here. This is the site plan. This is where I'll take a moment to talk about the Turner House, because I know there's a lot of questions about the Turner House. I'm going to stand up again. So if you look right here, that's where the Turner House exists today. So the Historic District Commission voted to say that the Turner House did have historical significance. So what that means to us is that they intend for us to, the town, not the building committee, the town, to keep that as a property. We petitioned to move it so that we could build this building, and they did vote to move that property. They were allowing us to move it. We are only moving it to build the building. We're not doing any major improvements to it. Going to move the house foundation and put that up there. It's going on a new concrete foundation that we'll put rocks in front of. Auxiliary building is the garage I talked about in the back there. So here is the main level of that building. I want to note that, and apologize to everyone, I had intended to bring large printouts tonight of this so that everybody could see it around the room. Fortunately, our printer died, so I wasn't able to do that, and I didn't get a hold of Castle Brews in time for them to bring them. We will have them. We're going to have them at this building. In the near future, we're also going to have them at the library so people can take a look at them. So the blue area is police. The red area is fire. The apparatus space you can see to the right there. And then the yellow area on the first floor is yellow and green, are shared type of spaces with the big lobby dispatch behind that. Second floor, you can see obviously there really isn't a second floor of the apparatus bay other than like the mezzanine and some training space. But there is a training tower, which is critical, and then obviously the shared spaces again, fire offices up front, and then police on the left side. So, substation, which will be on Route 27, adjacent to Monroe Street. It's 10,250 square feet. This was a bit larger. We worked with the fire chief and the deputy chief. I would have thanked both of them because I was tied up and didn't have any time to deal with it at that point. And we've made this smaller and more efficient. It still meets the needs of the department and gives us that response time in the Bryantville area where we have a significant amount of residents. It has 3 apparatus bays, a watch room. It does have turnout gear lockers, decon, bunks, kitchen, day room, triage area off the lobby, a wellness area, and an office space. So here is the rendition of that. It's a pretty basic overall building, but certainly will meet our needs and is better than what we have today. Site plan, you can see Route 27, School Street. It enters and exits off of that area. And then the building plan, obviously this is all fire operations. There are no police in this building. So you have your apparatus bays, your bunk rooms at the bottom section there, meeting, kitchen, decon, and then some training area. So we're going to shift now and talk about the budget. What's this going to cost? And I know that we've had some questions as why can't we build it for what others have built it, and I'm going to show you why we can't build it for what others have built their buildings for, because they built their buildings 4 and 5 years ago, and we're building our building next year. So the new construction is $26,500. Obviously, there's some site development there. People have asked, what's it cost for the Turner House relocation? It's $1 million. I mean, I know we showed $1,024,000, but we've rounded that to $1 million. We think we can do that. We do have contingency. It's important to have contingency. We talked about contingency at previous meetings when we did the community center. General conditions, every major commercial project has general conditions, insurance and bonds. That's the cost to make sure that if something bad happens, we're covered. Contractor fee, and then escalation to next June because we still have the planning, and I'm going to talk about that and and when I get to the next steps. So total construction costs carried from the first page, plus equipment, FF&E, loose equipment, security, technology, IT, and the radio costs. And then the indirect soft costs, which are the architect engineering, your OPM, your peer review, additional testing contingencies for a total anticipated project budget of $61,140,000. So I have this here for a reason, and I'm going to talk briefly about this slide, and these are costs. Community that's built or building or in the planning stage, many of these are still in the planning. You can see that based on dates. Square footage of the building, the estimated overall all-in cost, the all-in value or cost per square foot, the construction component of that, and then the construction cost per square foot. And Pembroke at the bottom, you can see is right in the range where everybody else is, except for the guys that built in the last, that aren't building currently but have already built. Here's why. And I have several slides I'm going to talk about why we can't build it for what others have built it for. So if you look here, 2020, we're right here. 2023, we're up there. This is the producer price index for new non-residential construction. It's produced by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I have several slides that are similar to this. Similar for plumbing, heating, air conditioning for commercial properties, same story. Electrical contractors for non-residential properties, same story. Roofing contractors, non-residential, same story. These are the 4 indexes I just showed you. And the reason I put them on one slide is because they're all showing positive trends over the last 2.5 years that are incredibly significant. 37.5% in some of the cases. That's why if we went back and applied that percentage, and I did the math to those ones that were built in 21, 22, that's why our numbers are there in 23, and as are the others if we compare the properties that I showed. One thing that this also shows is, someone showed me on here, since 2010, 13, when the price went down. So if we wait, the likelihood of the price going down is pretty slim. So I want to shift for a second and just go back to that other slide. Where Pembroke at 1137 and 784 based upon our numbers and our square footage in. You can see where our numbers are. In fact, we're slightly lower than Hingham, Stoughton, and Rockland. I know the chief, and I don't know if this is, do I share the actual number or just the budget number? So the Rockland is telling us that they're carrying 800 in their budget, but it's their estimates are showing 860. So we're there. We are confident we can build this building for the numbers that where we're at, and actually we're doing a slightly better job than some of our neighbors. So I want to move on now and talk about what that's going to cost, because it's a big number. You know, it's significant cost to the taxpayer, but unfortunately, or fortunately, either way you look at it, it's a needed cost. So there's 2 ways we can look at paying for this building, and I put them both on there, even though I'm not going to recommend one of them. I won't oppose it if that's the direction that the leadership decides to go. But a 25-year in the PMT is where you have an equal payment. It's almost identical to a home mortgage, where you put the cost to build it and you mortgage that over 25 years. The difference is that in municipal borrowing, although that payment is very, very close to that number, in municipal borrowing, it's individual coupons per year. So that 146.57 will change, excuse me, that's the quarter, the 586.27 annual payment will change slightly. It'll go up or down about $1 over the time, because those coupons aren't always identical, but it's going to be very close as you look at that. Or we could do 25-year level principal. Note the difference in interest cost. $7 million. However, with level principal, your average annual is $545.82. However, your first year numbers are much higher than that, and it declines over time almost to 0 at the end of those 25 years. So it's an average annual, that's what it is. I have always recommended level principal because it frees your bonding capability and you pay $7 million less interest. However, on a project of this size, sometimes people are more comfortable with a level payment, which is a known payment once you go out to bond. These are based on the $61,140,000 and a 4.5% interest rate. I asked, because we can bond this up to 30 years, I will not recommend and I will oppose a 30-year borrowing, and I'll tell you why. It's more than $10 million in interest on, if we take a 25-year level principal number, it's 11 million. It's basically $11 million. The other problem you have is if you bond this for 30 years, your building systems are going to start to fail before your debt's paid off. You're going to need a new roof. You're going to need new HVAC. You're going to need new carpet. You're going to need new technology updates. So you're borrowing or you're paying for money to upgrade those systems while you're still paying the debt on the first borrowing. So I do not recommend that we do that. And the cost savings isn't that much. You add $11 million to these numbers and you add 5 more years to the debt, there isn't a huge savings, so I'm not going to recommend it. If anybody wants to see those schedules, I have them. I'm willing to share them. And you'll see exactly what I said. You probably won't support it. So,
Bill, before you change that, can you just explain the average annual for the public, what that's based on, the median house?
oh, so yeah, so the average annual is based on a $536,700 assessment. So if your assessment is greater than that, it will be more than that. Obviously, if that's the average, you got a lot of people that are below that, that number also. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some information on the website. I actually had another 10 slides about this tonight and decided not to go there. I just didn't want to sit here and talk for 3 hours. I want to have an opportunity for I've already been talking for 45 minutes. So I wanted to have an opportunity to have exchange so we can take questions. So that's based on that number. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to actually give you the added tax rate so you can take your assessment and multiply it by that number. And if I can do it, and our website will support it, I'll actually put a calculator on our website so you type in your assessment, it tells you what the number is. Done that in the past. I don't know that that our technology will support that here. I hope it does because it really gives people that additional information. So, what are the next steps? Obviously, I'm going to talk about these 2 items, but then I'm also going to talk about where we are in the planning process and what that means. So the next steps are town meeting May 9th. I encourage everyone to come out to vote. I think all citizens, the residents of the town, should come to town meeting, have a discussion, a debate, and then vote. That requires 2/3. It is an appropriation that includes borrowing, so therefore it's a 2/3 vote. And then on the following Saturday, May 13th, if the select board, which they haven't voted yet, if the select board adds this to the ballot, there will be a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion vote on May 13th. Now, I want to explain what debt exclusion is because someone came in the office the other day and said, you're gonna put this on the taxes and you're gonna leave it there forever. No, we're not. We are not. Just like the schools, the school roofs, the other projects that are out there, when the debt's paid off, it comes off the taxes. It's not a Proposition 2.5 override. It is a debt exclusion override. Big difference. It's only for this debt. You can't do anything else with it. And if you don't spend it all, and I'm hoping we don't, I know with the community center, we're going to give back a bunch of money there. Based on where we're at today, slightly under budget, slightly ahead of schedule, I don't anticipate today what we know, unless they find something weird tomorrow, which they're done digging just about. They're backfilling foundations now. We're going to give money back to the taxpayers. We're going to ask to rescind some of that, and we have not borrowed that, as we promised. We said if we get the grant funds, we will not borrow it. We have not borrowed it. And we will, when the project is complete, we'll be asking the taxpayers to rescind that. So I do want to talk about next steps for this committee and architects. We are in the conceptual design phase today. That's basically complete. We know where we're at, what we're looking for. The programming is complete. The initial studies, traffic, geotechnical, phase 1 environmental are complete. We know we can build these buildings on those sites. Next steps are, if this is approved at town meeting and voted by the residents of the community, we will move forward. We will go into the next phase, which is schematic development. The architects will ramp up work with the engineers to finalize some of those things. We'll get a more formal cost estimate, although the cost estimate we have were completed by professional cost estimators. They will do that after we get through that. The next phase is probably in the design development phase. Am I right about that? That's where you guys typically would do it? We will go from schematic into design development, where we will finalize a lot of those engineering plans and finalize a lot of the plans. We'll get a cost estimate, make sure we're tracking okay. We will move forward from that into construction documents, likely get another estimate. There'll be actually two estimates, because what happens is we're going to engage very quickly with an OPM, Owner's Project Manager, like we did with the community center. They will work on behalf of the town with the architects, and we will reconcile those estimates to make sure that we're comfortable. At that point, we would go out to bid the project and award bids. The bidding phase is a two-phase process. You have, in Massachusetts, there are several sub-bid categories. I believe in this project, we'll probably have 14. We'll get sub-bids ahead of the general contractors, and then the general contractors will take those sub-bids, incorporate them into their general contract bid, and give us a formal final bid price. That will take several months to complete. We would anticipate that we would start construction likely just over a year from now, probably end of May, early June, if everything goes on schedule. So, having said that, I want to pause at this point and throw it to you folks if anybody has questions. We would ask, because we are televised, if you could come to the microphone if you have a question.
Steve Curley, Greenwood. I noticed in one of the slides that the ratio of the male to female facilities, and at least one of them was 4-to-1. The demographics are changing. Is that something that would be easily changed? Because over 25 years, I'm sure that there's going to be changes.
I may ask Todd Costa from Castle Bruce to answer that.
Sure. So one of the things that obviously you see that it's tough to predict today what it's going to be, but there is an initiative between nationally with the International Association of Chief of Police that is it's called the 30-30 initiative. So roughly 30% of the force, and we transpose that to both departments. 30% of the force is going to be female at that point. So even though you see the numbers as 4-to-1, we have devised a way that we can actually grant the greatest amount of flexibility with a simple, very simple construction moving of a drywall partition to shift the drywall very easily and capture additional walkers into either side. So yes.
Hi, Dan Traruco, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. For both chiefs, I just want you both to expand on something that you touched on, but it deserves a little more. For the fire chief, if you can explain, let the public know that your firefighters truly live there, so you need buildings in livable space. And for the police chief, some people might think that all your officers are out on the road, why do you need a building? And if you can explain your end of that, why you both need these buildings.
Sure. As he said, our firefighters work 24-hour shifts, so they come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they don't leave till 8 o'clock in the morning the next day. So that it is where they live. It's where they have to cook there, they sleep there, they shower there, they do all of those things. And over the years, as these conditions have really deteriorated, as the police chief alluded to earlier, it does have an impact on morale. We know that they've reported health concerns in the past, and I believe those. We have wall air conditioning units that aren't sufficient. The temperature fluctuations in the building, if that was in your own home, it wouldn't be something you'd want to tolerate. But they live in there 24 hours a day, so it has a big impact.
Although we don't live in the building, we're there all the time. We work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We don't even have a working kitchenette. So if there's contingency operations where we're stuck there for a couple of days due to storms, there's nothing adequate for us to even do anything there. We have to bring our own stuff and be prepared for it. We don't have a working shower where the locker rooms are. The ladies' locker room's in the attic, and we have currently 4 females now. When I started, there was just 1. And the common spaces is just one. And we utilize that for 10 different things, and it's just totally inappropriate. We're a liability, we're not ADA compliant. We talked about the cell area, that's not compliant with the state, it's a liability.
Even the administrative offices, we leave those out, but we're there every day. Our deputy chief's offices are basically closets that have been converted into office space that they're using. It's, difficult for them to even have someone come into their office to talk to them. They're that small. And like we've put up on our website, we invite anyone who wants to come and tour the facilities. We've put pictures up, but we're happy to give tours, and so we can, people can actually put eyes on what we're talking about.
And we will entertain the same thing, and hopefully you won't talk to me because you'll be there 2 hours. But ultimately, we're welcoming anybody that'll come in. It doesn't need to be an appointment. And if there's nothing busy going inside, we'll entertain that. The big thing is that you'll see, it's almost like you'll visually see, slides are good, but they're not, when you're there, when you see what's going on, it's really bad.
Good evening, one and all. I appreciate the ability to come to the meeting and to be heard. I am not a resident of the town of Pembroke. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Joe McDonald, and I am the sheriff here in Plymouth County. And I just wanted to come and comment. I wanted to see some of the slides. I've seen these buildings physically, and I know the chiefs have indicated that these buildings, I'm going to go out on a limb here and suspect that when they were built in the 70s, they were not adequate. Think about that. Jimmy Carter was in the White House, Barney Miller was on TV, and I don't think he would have worked there. But all kidding aside, our facility, correctional facility, was built in '94, and luckily, we've kept up with those things. But, we have to maintain certain standards, not just for our staff, but for the inmates and the detainees that are with us, or we will lose accreditation. These are important things. I know Chief McDonald mentioned liability. That's a big problem. Demographics have changed. The number, we're all struggling to recruit and retain people, and I'm happy to say that things have changed tremendously since then. I see our deputy chief here, and people notice she's female. That we have a great balance in law enforcement and public safety. We cannot have inadequate locker room and living spaces for that half of our workforce, which is very valuable to all of us. These things, thankfully nothing bad has happened. I noticed the Sally ports. We may have, our jail populations have declined and have been declining for probably 20 years now. But I'll say this, the bad guys that we're dealing with are worse, by and large, than they've ever been. So when I see that Sallyport situation, that really gives me the creeps, because if some bad thing is going to be attempted or happen by one of these bad guys, that is where they're going to do that. So there are public health issues here, there are multiple issues, and I know the price tag is gigantic, but I'll suggest to you from here, and I'll stick around and talk to anybody that wants to talk to me too, the price tag for not doing this is going to be much greater than the price tag for doing this. Nothing bad has happened, and that is due to 2 things, I will suggest. One of them is the grace of God, and the second one is the professional conduct of all of our public safety people here in the town of Pembroke.
Hear, hear.
So as I stand here, as the sheriff, I'm committed to providing whatever services that we can to help all of our towns. But I do think I cannot overstate the importance of doing this project and doing this now. And I thank you for your time and thank you for the invitation to come and speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Joe.
Yep. Well, can someone bring her a mic? We are,
I'm curious as to what's going to happen with the fire station on Washington Street that currently exists. Is that going to be sold? Can we offset the cost by selling that land. And I guess that's also true for the current structure that is over, I'm not sure where that current structure is, but that current structure, the other one.
So if you're asking me as the town manager what I'm going to recommend, I'll tell you what I'm going to recommend. I don't control that. It actually is a vote at town meeting to sell municipal property, so the residents of the town actually control that. I'm going to recommend that we keep the police station, as I'm recommending that we keep the Council on Aging building, and that we sell or divest in some manner of the Washington Street Fire Station and the Central Fire Station.
Thank you.
If you sell the fire station, by the way you describe it, I don't know if anyone would ever buy it, but anyway.
Well, they'll buy the land, but they won't buy the station, I can guarantee you that.
Okay. Where does that money go? Can that
So-
go toward the new auxiliary?
I think it depends, again, on town meeting. So the answer is it can go a lot of different places. But if we do it in a timely manner and we want to apply that to the debt payments, we can do that. It is not illegal to do that. It is permissible under the statute, but it depends on how town meeting votes.
So you haven't got a promise somewhere already?
No, I have no buyers today. And actually, just so everybody understands how that would work, we would, under the law, we would appraise those properties as they exist today, and the select board would vote a minimum value. We would take that article to town meeting. Town meeting would give us permission to sell it, and then we would ask for bids on those properties. If it met the minimum value and it meets whatever terms we put into that document, then we would sell the properties. But it is a bid process. It's not a I'm going to sell it to my cousin. That would be completely illegal.
Hi, excuse me, Allison Glennon, Old Cart Path. Thank you. This presentation was helpful. A couple questions I have are maintenance. Clearly, that has not happened on the current buildings. It seems that a lot of us either own or have owned houses that are much older than those buildings. How does that happen? Like, why has that happened? I mean, I'm just looking at the ceiling in here, and I see, water spots. So just, I fully support, we need these buildings, we need this new thing, but who's in charge of maintaining them so that our money isn't
So
needing to
today,
be redone in 40 years,
So today, I'm in charge of maintaining them. I've only been here 2.5 years. I have focused on building maintenance. We're putting more and more money into our building maintenance assets. We're doing more training for our custodial staff and our building managers. Historically, in Pembroke, before the Town Manager Act, which happened right before I came, it has been a responsibility of individual department heads. Those department heads, most of them, in fact, all of them that we're talking about here, these guys have only been around a short time. So I can tell you, they do what they can do with the resources that they have. I will give kudos to the sheriff. Thank you. Your guys have done a remarkable job. We had that huge flood at the police station that damaged several walls and floors, and the sheriffs have helped us out a great deal. Which has cut our costs to bring that up to speed. Pembroke isn't a wealthy community. Historically, we haven't thrown a lot of money at building maintenance. I think in the future, we will be throwing more money at building maintenance, and I would say adequate money at building maintenance so that we can maintain our buildings. I know that I have done several things at Town Hall that we're going to continue to do. We have some items in the capital plan for this building. So that everybody refers to the library. When I got here, they said, "Oh, we have a brand new library." And then I toured the library, and it was decent. It's nice. The library's beautiful. But do we know the library's coming up on 25 years old? It's not brand new, folks. That's the point at where your building systems start to fail. That's why you're seeing some of the things you're seeing here. And so we're looking at the building envelope here. We're looking at the windows. We're looking at the roof. We've already got a plan, and we've done some work on our HVAC systems and our boiler systems. So tomorrow we're replacing some of the lights in the parking lot, because when you walk out of here tonight, you're going to see it's probably pretty dark because they're not working. So we are and we do have a plan for building maintenance, and I will continue to ramp that up. One of the things I want to put into place, just so you asked a question, and now you're going to get me on a pedestal, I'm sorry. So one of the things we should have is we should have schedules. So what do we do every day? What do we do every week? What do we do every month? What do we do quarterly, semi-annually, annually, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What is our capital and maintenance plan for that? Because not everything is maintenance. Some of it is a capital plan. A new roof is not maintenance, it's capital. So what are those plans? Plan for that, make sure we're building into our budget when is that roof gonna fail. We know that. I mean, I know people, I've drawn it 100 times, my fish curve. I don't have a marker, so I can't draw it tonight, but as your building deteriorates, this is the top of the fish, and the tail's over here, your cost to make that improvement increases dramatically. And I'll give you 2 examples because they're easy examples, and they're both examples that exist in the town of Pembroke. I'm going to start with pavement management. If you catch that before that crossover point, your cost per, what do we measure asphalt? I think it's square yard. Could be cost per mile, but it doesn't matter for the example. Your cost per mile is 1/4 of your cost of a complete reclamation on that. Why we would ever wait? And I'll tell you, we have in Pembroke. I'm rolling out at the select board meeting next Wednesday night a pavement management plan that we've had engineers prepare for us. And I'm going to be asking town meeting to make sure that we get about $500,000 in Chapter 90 funds. We need to fund locally an additional $500,000 every year so that we can maintain our roadways. Our roadways are and I don't have to tell you, you guys drive them every day. Same story with roofs. If you let a roof fail, you're not just replacing the roof, you're replacing the underlayment, the insulation, and the ceiling. If you catch it before that point, you take the roof, you replace the roof, all the other infrastructure is safe. So,
And last question, so the 25-year debt, just like a mortgage, the 62 million plus the interest, so it's like 100 million. Is that,
it
am I
is,
understanding that correctly?
so if we look at, let me just go back on the slides. So if you look at that number on a 25-year level payment, the interest cost is $42,941,000. So in that case, you add the 61,140 to that, you're going to be at $104 million total debt cost. Similar there, and if you go to the 30-year schedules, you're into the 117 to 120.
Thank you.
But the big picture is the footprint of the facilities for the police and fire are undersized. Due to technology and upgrades and what we do in services, the spaces have been outdated 30 years ago. So that's the real big, we actually thought about adding on to the police station, but we only own so much of that property, so we couldn't do that. So I asked the gentleman from the Castle Boo to give me an estimate to repair or add on to certain areas that were deficient, and that came to close to $6 million, and that was putting a shine on a sneaker. So 10 years later, we're still gonna have to do something.
Yeah, you can do all that work and you still have an inadequate facility.
Carol Dodge, West Elm Street. I happen to be the one vote that voted for the fire station in 1976 when it passed at something called town meeting. We forget that every chief that existed, every department head in the town of Pembroke asked for their maintenance fee, asked for their state, the money that they needed to keep their buildings up. We at town meeting are the ones that authorized that money. Attend town meeting, ask for what you think they need, and support your department heads.
Thanks, Carol.
Don't hit us with that cane.
I missed 7 nights in 52 years.
Yeah.
But who's counting?
Me.
Good evening, Andrew Sullivan, Washington Street. Very supportive of the project. Thank you all for the work you've done to date. It's fun to be on this side of the podium. This is refreshing. I can throw the arrows now. No. The only question, I've been in Pembroke for my lifetime, and I've been in both buildings for years. If anybody has not been in them, pictures don't do them justice. Really, Mr. Wall had me downstairs in police where you're doing target practice. It's so bad. really get a tour of the buildings if you have not, to just see how dire a need it is. But my only question was about state and federal grants. If anybody's pursuing that, are there any opportunities for those?
So we've asked the question. Certainly, we will pursue them. I am not as confident in receiving them as I was with the community center. The grants seem to have dried up somewhat, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you. We'll likely get some small grants for this building. I'm confident that we will see those, but it's not going to be millions of dollars. We will continue to work on that, however.
Hi, Vincent Cogliano, Old Washington Street in Pembroke. Congratulations on the great work that you've done. I'll go back into the 1990s when we were talking about how bad the police and fire stations were and how we wanted to replace them and combine them, which for a number of reasons it didn't work out back then, to do it. But certainly we do need these buildings desperately. So again, you've done a great job in putting this project together. Just a couple of questions. One is been questions on the site prep and the 21E. And I know that you've just addressed that a bit ago, but could you feel comfortable that any additional borings won't come back with something that we get the worst case scenario on replacing, the...
So we don't have a 21E situation today.
Okay.
They did not find any contamination that would indicate a 21E situation. From a confidence level, I've built millions of square feet.
Can you explain what 21E is to everybody?
So 21E is a statute for contaminated properties. It is a requirement for cleanup from the EPA. And a 21E is the indicator of that property.
It's the environmental impact.
Yeah, it's the environmental impact,
Right.
correct. Mass DEP would implement certain cleanup requirements on the property owner, which is us today. We paid a professional environmental engineer to study that for us. And we don't believe we have a 21E, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you don't. I don't believe we do. But I got burned on a project, so I know what can happen. We were doing some stuff on a state project, and you just never know. So I'm confident, based on the studies that have been done, that we don't have that situation. But I can't promise that it's not there. I don't know.
Okay. Someone also had mentioned that they thought they heard that the water table was at about 6 feet, and you were doing site work that's going to go 7 feet to do the digging down to that far. Does that present any additional problems if the water table is there? Have to pump out or anything? Or see you nodding no, but I'm just,
I'm going to toss that at Castle Blues.
Somebody had asked that question, and I thought it was...
It's fair enough.
Yeah.
So if the water table is at times within the 6-foot mark and we're going down to 7 feet,
Right.
it's just a dewatering operational thing for the contractor to deal with during construction. That's
Okay, not a
pretty
big
much
deal
it.
then.
Not a big deal.
Okay. While you have the mic, one of the things that I had asked at one point too also was, what other projects have you guys done? What experience have you got in designing buildings like this?
So Castle Blues has been doing this since, '63. It became a specialty of our company. I myself have been doing it since starting in '99. And in the area, we've got, Mansfield, Sharon, Plainville, Needham. Well, we're working in Quincy right now, Brockton. The list goes on.
Oh, okay.
So,
Right,
got a
thank
few.
you. One last question. The Turner Building, what could go wrong? You've got 3 chimneys on that building.
So
You have wait a minute, just let me finish. You have $1 million in the project to move it. It's plaster walls on the interior, quite old plaster walls, I might add, which just looking at them sometimes will make them crack. I've looked online for companies that move buildings, and the highest estimate I can find is $200,000 to move an average building, and this is $1 million. Is this extra money that seems to be in this project for moving that building in case it falls apart and has to be done brick by brick? Is that what, you know?
I just want to make one note. I don't believe there are plaster walls. I think they're all gone.
Really? You think they're gone? Okay. Intentionally or no?
Not by anyone here.
All right.
No, so you're looking at just the move cost. We have to look at placing a new foundation, digging that foundation, so on and so forth. That is built into that $1 million, as well as you need to realize or remember that this is a state bid project. So we are, have to
Okay.
adhere to Chapter 149,
All right. Okay.
prevailing wage rates, which are not the same thing as if you or I are calling somebody to move our house, you know,
Okay.
a
All right.
mile down the road.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yep.
Hi, I'm Deb Flanagan from Oldham Street. On the Turner House topic, by the way, I am definitely for new public safety building. The only sad thing is it'll be moving farther away from my house. And I'll tell you, you've been to my home many, many times to save my husband. So, much appreciated. Is it possible to fund some or all of the Turner building with community preservation funds?
Is it legally possible? Yes. We don't have that much money in community. It would take several years to fund it, so
Okay.
in reality, no.
All right. And next question, is anyone here from an insurance company that can maybe talk dollars and cents? And, I mean, I think a real motivating thing is to know that people in the town of Pembroke may possibly enjoy paying less in terms of dollars and cents for their homeowners insurance if these projects go through or the substation goes through. I just think that's a real nice incentive for, you know, Pembroke taxpayers. We may be paying more in terms of property taxes, but the idea of paying less in terms of homeowners insurance, I think, is a real incentive.
I don't know of anyone on the committee who is in the insurance industry.
So, I mean, we talked about the ISO rating, and I think that's a real motivating topic. And I was just wondering if there's anyone here, you know, that can.
That is one, response times, there's a lot of different pieces that go into building the ISO rating. So towns are rated from a 1 to a 9. We're currently at a 4. Response times, station locations are one piece of that. And then, like I said, insurance companies use that information to set your rates. So one, and from what I understand, some insurance companies do that differently, and they use different pieces of data. So it's something that can certainly help, and it does help, but it's one piece of your overall ISO score.
So what's the better? Is the 9 or the 1? What do we want?
1 is the best.
1 is the best?
Yeah.
Okay. So possibly if we get these projects accomplished, we could improve that rating?
We would never be a 1. I mean, we
not
can never
gonna
be
be
a
a
1.
Oh,
But-
okay.
But our hope is to improve that ISO score, absolutely.
We can try,
can
but we're not
aspire to
going
be
to
a
get
one.
there. You wouldn't want
You
to
would
see
need
that
a lot
price.
more firefighters
You
to
don't
be
want
a
to see
1.
that price tag.
So my last question is about the square footage. I just put some rough numbers together. I noticed you're currently occupying roughly 15,000 square feet.
Slightly more than 15 right now. Yeah.
And you're now looking at, you've designed roughly 60,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's well,
And then I
if
noticed
you include a
on your
garage.
chart, Bill, that we're designing the largest public safety building, and I just wanted to.
Well, we're not. We're not. We're
Well,
absolutely not.
On the
On
chart.
that
you pulled
chart
out.
in this region, though, we are.
And I'm just.
But
Is
we're
that
not even
cast in-
close to the largest.
Just because I'm very frugal, and I'm just
Mhm.
saying, are you designing for the future? And how many years down the future? And is that absolutely necessary?
So one of the.
Have you thought about maybe designing something, like what percentage of that 60,000 square feet would we be occupying if we moved in today? And is it possible maybe to scale that down just a little bit and do an addition down the road instead?
We actually had a much bigger footprint early on, and we have scaled that. We have scaled that down, and we will be occupying 100% of that. And we're confident that we can get out. What was the number? Was it 20 or 30 years? Do you remember? Or were we looking at a 50, 30 years within that? Which we don't want to build like we did in the 70s. I mean, because tomorrow it becomes inadequate.
But there's always, the option of building and then adding on.
Well, but your economy, you lose that economy of scale that we talked about before if we downsize the value per square foot or the cost per square foot, and I'll let these guys confirm what I'm saying, will go up. So you may cut, I know this, I did it. You may cut 10,000 square feet out of the project and save a very small number overall, and then regret it in the future because a week down the road after you open the building, it's not adequate. So
Are we going to have a lot of empty space, though?
No.
No, in fact, we went to Mansfield, which we used a lot of the renderings from, and they're about the same demographics as Pembroke as far as police and fire and population. And then the biggest complaint they had is they actually undersized their storage and other things in there. So they could have done things even bigger.
It just means we're so completely deficient right now.
Half our stuff is outside.
Yeah.
Or in a wooden shed. It's
DPW,
really, it's
empty
really,
fire station.
It's really not acceptable.
What are you thinking in terms of that auxiliary shed, in terms of construction materials? I mean, that's not going to be nothing fancy, right?
No,
Okay.
not at all. It's a garage. It's a glorified garage.
Okay, that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Were there any questions that you received?
So we did receive some. I want to note that there was one item I did not cover that I intended to cover. Let's see.
I could speak. I did receive a couple questions as well. One of them was about apparatus, and if we build these, build these buildings, do we anticipate asking for additional apparatus? And the answer to that is no. I actually hope that we're able to scale back the apparatus that we have. We have trucks on 27 now, and we have some just parked. They're just garage space. But as we move to 2 buildings, my hope is to scale back by 1 engine. The one advantage this could have is we use all 3 of our ambulances virtually every day. They're all out on the road almost every single day. I would like someday to be able to keep 1 extra ambulance as a reserve piece before we trade it in, so that when one goes out of service, we have something else. This project would allow us a place to park it, because every time when we don't have the ambulance available, we have to rely on mutual aid. It takes longer to take care of the patient, and we use these every day. But as far as fire apparatus, my hope would be to scale back on the amount of fire apparatus we have.
Yeah, one of the questions, I actually had to slide. It was one of those 40 slides I cut. But one of the questions was, and I don't know that it's a relevant question, but I'll answer it anyway, was we bought this site in 2018. How much of the site is actually buildable? I actually plotted on a slide the DEP wetlands but it's here. So if you look here, you can see vegetated wetlands. From that area, it's a 100-foot setback in this scenario under the statute and local conservation requirements. By my calculations, it was almost just under 60% was of the property is buildable. So it is what it is. I mean, the residents voted to buy it for this purpose, and we bought it for this purpose. Now we need to use it. So I don't know why the individual asked the question, but I know it was out there. So do you have the questions that you showed me earlier? Can you refresh my memory on those? Well, we'll put them up. So I'll tell you what, we'll put them up on the website. We're going to start the frequently asked questions page, and we'll go ahead and put them up there. And if anybody else has questions, you call them in, send us an email, drop them by on a piece of paper, and we'll answer them and put them under the frequently asked questions section, because there's been a number of questions that have been asked by people. We tried very hard to answer those questions in tonight's presentation.
I know, Bill, one of the questions that I had seen out there on some of the sites on Facebook were about the Turner House again, as much as I don't want to talk about that anymore, is could have we moved that somewhere else so it wouldn't have interfered with the building where we have it. But I think that was the septic conversation that we had at one of our meetings and why that couldn't be done.
Yeah. Yeah, so the septic is, if you look at the slide here, you can see it, it's labeled. It's right in front of the Turner House to the northwest of the building. It says septic. Some folks wanted to put the Turner House there. Because of the location of the Turner House, if you flip the two, the septic would be in that buffer zone for the wetlands, and we can't. I'm sorry. So the septic would be, thank you. The septic would be in the buffer zone for the wetlands, and we can't put it there. So we cannot flip the location of the Turner House and the septic. The Turner House has to go where it is aside because of the size and the size of the septic. So,
Steve Ciciotti, Select Board. So there's some discussion about tax impact, and we saw what the cost of the actual project is right here, assuming we go with the principal $546, I think it was, per year. I know that, so there's the high schools coming off, there's the other elementary school roof projects are coming off a couple of years from now, a few years from now. Did we think about or get some numbers around what kind of savings people would experience with that?
yep. So that same $536, $700 taxpayer will save $183 a year when those projects come off. We were actually hoping that these would offset a little closer, but interest rates have eaten that up. So we were at 1.88 when we built the community center. We're currently projecting 4.5, or if we do a 30-year, because of the risk of the lenders, it's a 5% number. So $183 for that same. Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other questions? Thank you, everyone. Follow the website. It's on the town's website. And if you have questions, please ask us.